Hello and welcome to the 2020 Latino Comics Worldwide Expo. My name is Isabella Duco, and I am a education intern, and I'm part of the MOLA staff. And on behalf of the Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach, California, I'd like to thank you for joining us today as we celebrate Latinx art and comics. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the event sponsors that made it possible to make this week-long event for free and accessible to all. And here is a brief welcome from our presenting sponsor, Hyundai.
On behalf of Hyundai Motor America, we welcome you to the 2020 Latino Comic Expo. As part of our Hispanic Heritage Celebration, we are thrilled to sponsor this great event. We hope that you enjoy the amazing Latino talent that will be featured.
Additional support was provided by San Manuel Band of Mission Indians and Josephine S. Gumbiner Foundation and the Robert Gumbiner Foundation and the City of Long Beach and the Arts Council of Long Beach. And your host and moderator today is Javier Hernandez. And Javier Hernandez is a creator of El Muerto, a comic launched in 1998 that was adapted into 2007 film starring Wilmer Valderrama, for which Javier served as associate producer and arts educator, as well as a lecturer on the Latino comics. Javier co-founded the Latino Comics Expo in 2007 with Ricardo Padilla. And our spotlight today is Jaime Hernandez, and has been happily making comics professionally in Southern Califas for almost 40 years, and mainly love of rockets with his brother Gilbert. And there's nothing else he'd rather do. And he is a legendary cartoonist and is amazing. And I will leave you with Javier and Jaime Hernandez and the rest of our amazing participants. Thank you and enjoy the program.
Thank you, Isabella.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
Jaime, so welcome to our virtual Latino Comics Expo. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is pretty modern.
I know, right? It's so high tech, man. It's like the future.
I was scared. I was scared I was going to press the wrong buttons.
Hey, well, we still got an hour, so you never know. Hey, so despite pandemics, wildfires, and earthquakes, I'm going to ask, how are you doing? How's everything with you?
Oh, pretty good. The pandemic, at first wiped me out, but then I realized I don't go out anyway,
Right.
But no, I'm doing okay. I'm actually getting a lot of work done because I'm home a lot,
Yeah.
The world's going crazy, but somehow just hanging in there, and
It's almost even more important for us to hunch over our artboard and just get lost in our drawing, right?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, last night I saw everybody was tweeting about the earthquake, and it was big, but for me, if nothing falls down, none of my figures, okay, hopefully everybody else was okay too. So I just I stayed up for about an hour, but I couldn't sleep. Didn't help me looking at Twitter and Facebook. Ooh, what happened with these people? So
right. Yeah, it's those one of the things where you're just sitting there and then all of a sudden it rattles and you go, ooh, wow, I get to tell somebody.
Right. Like me, you're a California native, right? So we've grown up through every earthquake, since day one. So
yeah, the first one I remembered was the Silmar one in '71.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I lived through the 92 one, that big one.
Northridge or
Northridge, yeah. Yeah, that's where everything fell down.
Yeah. It's like, darn it, my Batman figure broke. I'm pissed. It's not a sense of pride, but we also had the Whittier earthquake. Oh, we got our city named after one. That was pretty scary. That was,
there you go.
That's the one where it felt like I thought there was a truck, a semi truck driving through the house. That's
right.
The battle.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, let's hope we can get through the hour without a little shake or tremor. If something happens, if you want to panic and run out, just leave. That's fine. We'll understand. Or if I run out and leave, forgive me. But anyway, thanks for being here. And so during the let's say podcast, during this video, I guess we might have some questions pop up at the midway point from the fans. So Gabriela from Mola may pop in and run those questions by us, and then hopefully we can have some more questions at the end of the session. So sure. Just so you know. So yeah, you've been doing, you're coming up on 40 years, you and Gilbert, of Love and Rockets. I mean, do you look at that, or are you just like, hey, this is what I do, man?
Most of all, it's just like, this is what I do. You know, I finish one, I start another, you know, and I've been doing that all this whole time, because I thought, you know, this is how you're supposed to do it, right?
Right.
But yeah, and then, you know, it hit 30, and then I went, okay, I'm still not old, you know. Right. And then it's coming to 40, I go, it's a pretty good stretch. When I hit 50, then I can stand next to Charles Schultz, you know.
Wow, that's right. You know, it's funny about anniversaries. Like, well, we do comics, so yeah, like 10's a big one. You know, they make a big deal out of it, and then 20's okay, hit 20, and then 25, and then they want to do every 5 years. You know, but yeah, after your 40th in a few years, 50th. But I'll ask you about that later. I'll have a question about longevity. As far as the beginning, yeah, you've talked about it before, but you know, hopefully we have a lot of new people tuning in and discovering your work. I mean, you grew up in a household where comics were readily available, unlike maybe a lot of people had to sneak them in, or the parents were like, "What's this trash?" But for you and your brothers, it was something pretty normal, right?
Yeah. Our mom read comics in the 40s. You know, she had to hide hers. You know. But when our oldest brother Mario, when he started growing up, my mom started giving him a dime or whatever and go, buy a comic book. And he'd go, oh, why? You know, or whatever. But first time he bought his first comic book, he goes, I'm here, man. So, you know, I came, 6.5 years after him. So comics were already there when I was growing up. You know, so, and it was encouraged. Mom liked them. She read them alongside us, you know, and stuff like that. And it was just, I thought it was normal, you know. I thought, doesn't everybody read comics? Then you start going to school and you start to realize people don't read comics.
Right. Well, your mom should get a Guinness World Record. I mean, she told Mario, here, go buy a comic. And he's like, what? That's amazing. I think I've ever heard a story like that. That's
right.
Yeah. And so like in your household, did you have a lot of, because obviously you had a lot of influence from American comics. What type of Mexican culture or, you know, stimulus did you guys have in your home or with your family and the get-togethers and all that?
Well, it was, you know, my dad came from Mexico. My mom came from El Paso, which was just at the border. So we lived kind of a, you know, Mexican-American life, you know, back and forth. Dad's life was a little more old country, you know. Mom's was more Americanized, you know. They like Benny Goodman, you know, and stuff like that. So I saw a lot of both sides, you know, which weren't that different, but you knew when you went to see Dad's family, it was more the old country, like we would visit Theo's with chickens and raising goats and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not saying that's all Mexico, but you know, just really old school, and mostly Spanish. On my mom's side, it was mostly English, you know. So the house, we grew up mostly English speaking. So I didn't see a lot of Mexican comic books that much, you know, but every once in a while, some would pop in, you know. You know, I remember when Mario was buying Memin Benguin, you know, or on a regular basis, you know, whatever that's worth. But Yeah, so yeah, I don't know, it was just cool. But then when my dad died when I was 7, we lost a lot of the old country, you know, a lot of we didn't see relatives from that side as often as we did, you know.
Right.
But you know, then we had to go back and look for it, you know, as we got older.
Right.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar upbringing because my dad's side, you know, East LA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom's side, when they come to visit, they're coming from you know, Guadalajara, and there's a definite difference, not just the language, right? But
Right.
like our relatives from Mexico, they're always more proper, and like, you know, they always, you know, it's like they always wear pants and like nice dress shoes with string, you know, tying it with strings. And the East LA family, when we go to the parties, it was the typical, you know, like a Jaime Hernandez comic, you know, I had uncles with like the perfectly pressed white, you know, white t-shirt and then the blue
Right.
jeans cuffed at the bottom with the black boots. But as you know, as a kid, I mean, you know, you don't separate people, but you know, you start noticing, okay, this is this is that East LA look.
Yeah.
And oh, this is Mexico, and these people are, you know, at least my family, that, you know, they're always educated and stuff. So yeah, it's a really interesting dichotomy. And in our house, you know, mom and dad, they're playing you know, Siempre en Domingo, they're watching Chavo del Ocho, we're sitting there watching that. But at the same time, I go to my room and I'm watching $6 Million Man and reading Marvel.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing growing up in a bicultural home. And I'm fortunate, I'm sure you feel the same way, that we just happen to be born into Mexican families and have that dichotomy.
Yeah, yeah, we got to see both sides. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And so what's your earliest memories or like drawing? Because obviously you're an artist, and I'm sure that came from childhood. Like most kids draw, because I teach classes, and like every 8-year-old kid will draw. It's just that when they get to about, I don't know, 12 or 13, then like half the class, oh, I'm not good enough. She's better. He's better.
Yeah.
Self-conscious. But as little kids, we don't know any better. That's the beautiful thing about childhood.
Right. Right. Yeah. I did everything because I had 3 older brothers. You know, I was in the middle somewhere out of 6. And so one drew, Mario drew, Beto drew, Richie drew. So I drew.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, I'm going to do what they do, you know. And so I was drawing as long as I can remember, you know.
Yeah.
Nothing made sense, but from my brothers tell us was mom and dad's version of putting us in front of the TV to shut us up.
Wow.
They would get a shopping bag, a grocery bag, and tear it open and lay it flat and put out pencils and crayons and stuff. And dad, with his limited English, would go, paint, you know.
Yeah.
And we'd go, there's no paints here, Dad. but you know that, and so it was always just drawing, and for some reason we took to it like it was a good thing. It wasn't like no, I don't want to do this, I want to go out and play or whatever.
Right.
You know.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Another reward we got to give your mom. That's great stuff. You know, it's funny, my older brother, I guess every town has Hernandez brothers, so my older brother Albert, yeah, he used to draw, right? So as a kid, I'm 8 years old, like I'm looking at his sketchbook. He used to draw these really cartoony, like sport figures, right? These big hunky, big like cartoony basketball, football, baseball players. So yeah, of course, you're influenced by the older brother. And then my fortunate thing was when he was a normal guy. When he got to high school, he said, okay, screw comics, I'm done with that crap. So he gives me his big shopping bag, about 2 shopping bags full of comic.
Oh,
so
man.
They were like 1968, 69, 70 Marvel DC. So I'm getting Neil Adams, I'm getting of course Kirby, and I'm getting like reprints of Ditko. So yeah, I mean, I blame my brother. Every interview I do, I always mention Albert Hernandez. You know, he gave me the drawing influence and the comics. So yeah, so I took a different path than he did. Were any of your brothers and you as a kid into sports? I'm always curious about cartoonists and sports. As far as
I played Little League, you know, a few years. 2 of my other brothers did. The brother between me and Beto, he was the sports guy. He was the guy who liked to leave the house and not come back till dinner time. You know, and he was always outside running around, getting in trouble and stuff, and doing sports and into that kind of thing. And the rest of us would play sometimes, you know, but but you know, we drew, you know, most of the time. Yeah.
If I ever was out there physically playing, it's because I'd find the friends who want to play like superheroes. You know, it's like
right.
I'll do physical stuff, but I'm gonna be Spider-Man, and they're, you know, so it's complete geekdom. As you're getting older now in your teen years, obviously you've always continued drawing. You stuck with the drawing, and did we talk about? We talked about the comics you grew up in your teen years. What comics were you reading? Because I know you grew up big fan of Archie, Dennis the Menace, the old Marvel monster stuff.
Yeah.
How about in your teen years? I mean, are you buying new comics or reading the same old comics?
My teen years was, I was like, what, 15, 16? Well, mid 70s. So by that time, Marvel and DC, the Marvel style took over, and it was mostly that stuff. But we were reading a lot of the older comics we still had, like Dennis the Menace and Archie comics from the 60s. And we would read those still over and over again. In the mid 70s, when Mario got married and moved out, you know, we didn't have comics anymore. He took them all. So Gilbert and I we would walk downtown and go to the different newsstands, you know, and stuff like that. And so I was buying, you know, I like super teams. So I like the Legion of Superheroes and like, and you know, the Avengers or whatever, Fantastic Four and stuff like that. But I was still reading the old other comics, you know, and those were starting to touch me more. I like the way these Archie artists make characters move. I like the way they tell the stories. The Dennis the Menace artists too, you know. Even if these were comics I was reading since I was a little kid, I just was reading them again over and over again. So some of the artists started to stand out. They started to like this guy. Why do I always go back to this guy? Because he knows there's something under the house style. You know, he had to draw Betty and Veronica, how Betty and Veronica looked, but underneath was this artist who just had a really cool vision, a real cool way of moving a story. And I started to pick up on that, and I started to like that stuff. And you know, then when I like graduated high school in '77, I started to really kind of almost study those old comics, because I was going, why do I like these? You know, why do I keep going back to these? And I would just look at them over and over, and I would study and go, oh, I like the way this guy does this. I want to draw comics like this. I want to do this. But, you know, I was still buying X-Men comics and stuff like that, you know. But there was just something about those. And I just had this, between high school and Love and Rockets was like late 70s to early 80s, I just had this revelation of drawing comics and telling stories, and I just like was going crazy. It was just kind of like, God, I want to do it like this. I want to do so much of my own characters. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. You know, so it just it was just a really good time and just eye-opening. I don't know why. Maybe because I wasn't in school anymore. Or something, you know, so I was teaching myself. I don't know. But yeah, that was just a really learning time. Yeah.
And then in your teen years also, you're getting into what, lowrider culture and punk music?
Oh yeah. Cruising on Sundays in Oxnard, you know. Savior's Road, man. Sing and you know, at that time, by the 70s, Oxnard was very much like a little East LA. And it got pretty mean and pretty violent, and the cholos got really hardcore, and So I was seeing a lot of that, and then later when I got into punk, I noticed the violence there. I was going, I've seen this. I've seen this. There's not much different going on here. But yeah, so yeah, I remember cruising Sunday night, something always happened. Someone got stabbed, and it was really crazy, but exciting to a kid, to a teenager. Right. I thought like, hey, I'm cool like these guys. I would never go near those guys.
But I mean, you see them in your neighborhood. It's not on TV. Like, hey, they're right there down the street.
Yeah. And it was kind of like, wow, this is like survival, and this is real. But as a kid, I was just like, this is how you live, man. Yeah. And then I'd go home and draw comics.
Yeah, definitely was an influence on it. And then you also started submitting artwork to like what we call zines. In case people don't know what those are just like, we had a workshop on it this morning actually. But zines are like fans get together and they put out these little comics or magazines, articles about whatever, punk music or movies. So you started contributing to these type of publications, right?
Yeah. Most of them were like science fiction zines and fantasy zines. So I would send a drawing of an astronaut, and a dragon, a space dragon, or whatever. And because Gilbert and I just wanted to be published. We didn't know about our future, but we just go, wow, you mean I can just send them a drawing and they'll print it, and I'm out there. It was real naive, but at the same time, just like, oh, that's all you got to do is just do a drawing, have someone put it out there, and you're out there. So I guess that kind of led us to want to do our own comics and stuff like that. Yeah.
Seeing your stuff in print that you didn't print, somebody else printed, like, oh look, it was good enough for their book.
Yeah. And then I remember there was this guy, let's see, I had just graduated high school, and there was this guy who put an ad in the buyer's guide. And he said, I'm putting out a comic book. If you have a story, send me a story. Maybe it'll be printed in my comic. And I was like, that's all you got to do. So I did this 4-page story. I learned so much from that story, the mistakes, right. Don't rule panel borders with ink unless the ruler's elevated, otherwise it's gonna bleed underneath. I learned really quick. And then I got a story published, and I was just like, I can do this. I wasn't thinking money because I didn't think I would ever make money, Right. But I just like that there was that opportunity to start from the bottom. I never once dreamt of moving to New York and drawing for Marvel. I just always said, I'll draw for this cheapo thing that doesn't pay. No one makes money, but it gets out there somehow. Someone's reading it, and that was just a really cool idea to me.
And in your head, it was always about like, hey, I don't want to work on Daredevil. It's like, I can just make up my own characters, my own stories.
Yeah.
I can get them out.
Yeah. And by that time I was getting cocky and going, my characters are better than theirs, like that kind of thing. Although if I met them face to face, I wouldn't say anything.
Right. There's one last thing I want to talk about your early years before you got published. A favorite topic of mine. Let's talk wrestling at the Olympic Auditorium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You in person about it. Let's tell the audience about, when you started first watching wrestling.
Oh, it was like, mid 60s.
Wow.
My brothers were like, hey, our cousins next door watch wrestling. We should watch it too. Every Wednesday, Channel 5, blah, blah, blah. And so they turned it on. We watched wrestling, and it was like, I was like, oh, it's fighting, like, and I remember, and it was just fun, because the wrestlers were really funny, and and stuff. But I remember every once in a while, someone got his head smashed into a locker and bled. And it was just kind of, I'm just like a 6-year-old kid just going,
all this blood.
yeah, yeah. And so, and then it would change to another thing where the wrestler was being funny, you know, and so it was like comedy, tragedy, violence,
Right.
and you know, and you just started, and then you like the good guys or the bad guys, you know, and stuff like that. So wrestling just stuck with me since, you know, and I just you know, I would watch it and then I would stop watching it and then I'd watch it again, and then like you know, I remember in the around 1970 when Blassie and Tolas had their big feud in the and that was cool. The dog collar matches and just bite Freddy, bite Freddy, bite.
So much blood and violence, and like, hey, the kids are watching it. The parents are like, oh, that's fine, just watching TV.
Yeah, it's on TV. Hey, mom.
It must be okay. Yeah. I used to watch it in the mid 70s, and yeah, for me it was just like, oh, it's like watching a comic book.
Yeah,
These people are beating the hell out of each other for no reason, but it's fun. And yeah, you know, especially in the mid 70s, where to me what's funny now especially is like the racism, because there'd be this one guy, Black Gordman. I don't know if you remember. Oh, he was horrible. He was a Mexican guy going by the name Black Gordman, and he would call the hero Chavo Guerrero, he called him a, you know, the terrible lousy Mexican. I'm thinking, but he's saying it in Spanish and he's Mexican, but he's calling.
Yeah.
Back then, they could get away with that on the local TV, and I ate all that up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I remember Gordman would say, "We're not from Mexico. We're from New Mexico," and that would just drive the fans crazy.
Oh, it was wonderful. And then that's why I first discovered this young, flamboyant, hotshot Roddy Piper.
When Piper came to the Olympic, I mean, he took over, man. That was just wild.
Yeah.
And they started to come to Oxnard, you know, because they would tour up the coast, you know. And after the Olympic, they would come and they came to Oxnard, and Piper's battles were legendary, man. I mean, it was just, I mean, that was when I first got to see it live, you know. And it's amazing.
My favorite ever, because you know the storylines, if people don't know in wrestling, is Piper had lost the loser leave town match to one of the Guerrero brothers, so he had to leave. And guess a week later, there was this new masked wrestler. He had a whole white costume with a Canadian flag called the Canadian, and he spoke broken Spanish. But every one of us fans, we knew it was Piper. And he would wrestle for months, and the announcers were too stupid to realize it's Piper. And like,
right,
it was outrageous, you know, like, you know, it's Piper, but you love it. He's one of those villains you love to hate. So those are just the golden era for me of wrestling, that 70s.
Oh, Olympics. Sure. And then when Piper got his referee's license, oh boy.
What idiot would give the worst cheater ever? But that's what makes it better. Wrestling was just better reality because it was so stupid and, you know, it was so ridiculous. It's like a comic book.
Right.
So I lost track of wrestling by the late 70s, but then in the mid 80s, I started hearing about WWF, Cyndi Lauper, and wait, Roddy Piper is back and he's fighting Mr. T and he's kicking Cyndi Lauper across the ring. Like, he's back. So I was back in.
Yeah. I mean, because you knew Piper and you know, okay, Piper's here. Something's got to go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, I just love his shtick. You know, they hire him to come to the league. Piper, go out there, sell tickets, and piss off the fans. And he's like, okay, and he did it. So that's why you got to love him. He honored his end of the contract.
Right.
So I was crushed when he passed away. I mean, so damn young. He's by barely 60, 62, but we got YouTube for Piper. And look up, you can find his old Olympic Auditorium Canadian videos on YouTube. They're so mind-bogglingly stupid and beautiful.
Doing all the Piper moves.
Yeah. Yep. Let me check in with Gabriela because I'm sorry, we could talk wrestling for hours.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Want me to pop in?
Pop in, and if you can share them with Jaime. Thanks.
Yeah, hi Jaime. It's so nice to see you again. We're always so excited when you participate in Latino Comics Expo. So I have a few questions from the audience. The
Okay.
first one I'd like to ask is Ann Johnson wants to know, why do you think your primary characters are mostly women?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, besides I like to draw women, I love women. I love writing women. I love drawing women. I love making them characters. I love them. Um, I I don't know. It's just something that clicks. You know, when I do women, that I prefer to write the women characters, and I like to make them run things. Um, you know, maybe part of it was, you know, in my punk days in LA, late 70s LA, a lot of the women were just forefront, you know, in the punk scene. This was before it became a football game, and a lot of the women had to back up. But it was just it was, you know, really diverse, and I just liked watching the women kind of be in charge and stuff like that. And and you know, I was like, oh boy, I get to draw them as well. but yeah, it's I just I love women. That's all I can say.
And then to follow up on that, Andy Nordfall wants to know if any of your characters are based on real people.
Some of them closer than others. Mostly characters come from, like, say, a hairstyle or that of a friend of mine, or someone I've seen, the way a person dresses, or, you know, but I put a different personality in them or something like that. A lot of times I create characters to be opposite of others so they don't look like the other characters. So I don't mix up the reader. Like, okay, these people have dark hair here. I'm going to create a light-haired person so you never get them confused and stuff like that. Sometimes that's how the characters are created. Sometimes it is a person, like, I think this person is really funny. I'm going to steal their personality but disguise it under a different look, you know, like that.
Yeah, thank you. And then the last question I'm going to address right now comes actually from our friend Ricardo Padilla. He says, "Hola Jaime, the eternal question, Betty or Veronica?" And then he wants to know if you have any new storylines lined up for Frogmouth.
Okay, first answer, Midge. No, I grew up, when I was really little, I liked Veronica because I couldn't read the comics. And then when I started reading them, I go, oh, she's mean. I like Betty, you know. And then after a while, I was like, it doesn't matter. I like them both, you know, for their strength. So I'm chickening out on that one. And then what was the second part of the question?
He was wondering if you had any new storylines for Frogmouth.
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm doing her. She's very easy to write because she's obnoxious, and obnoxious characters can say anything and it works for their character. Someone like Maggie, who has a conscience, you got to be careful with what she says, because if she says the wrong thing, that's going to take the story somewhere, you know, and it's going to become Maggie's story. Frogmouth, she can open up her mouth, say something wrong, and you can just turn the page like it's normal.
Okay,
Yes.
Well, I'm going to pop out now, and I'll be collecting questions from the audience from the chat and the Q&A, and I'll come back in at the end, but thank you so much for your responses.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. Really
Ricardo.
quick. Ricardo snuck in. Not that we're supposed to screen these calls. Really quick, just for the audience, again, if they're new to Love and Rockets, you probably get asked this a lot. Like, hey, where would I start reading? Because, you know, you got 38 years worth of books. Fantagraphics keeps all the storylines in different collections.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell people when they ask me, because there's, like, if we go to your first book, Maggie and the Mechanics, like, hey, why she's flying around in a jetpack and there's dinosaurs? And
Yeah.
in later books, she's just hanging out, regular lady, just at her apartment. Can you address some of that?
That used to be a problem for me because it's like, well, start from the beginning. Wait, I drew that almost 40 years ago. They'll see my mistakes. And maybe they won't want to continue. Oh no, and also, yeah, she's being a space mechanic. What if they don't care or whatever? And then I gave up and I just thought, start anywhere, because if you like it enough, you'll want to go back or forward. Hopefully it'll catch your interest. People used to tell me, they'd go, I read one of your comics, but I didn't know who anybody was. And I said, because that's the first time you read the comic. But I just say, start anywhere. Hopefully it'll grab you and you'll be curious for more.
I was telling a friend of mine, he hadn't read your stuff, and I just told him, because I recently reread it, The Love Bunglers. And you're figuring, well, that's so far deep into the, the storyline. But
Yeah.
I told him, and I'll say it, it's like, I'm not gonna give any spoilers. I saw an interview you did once, and the lady was giving out all the, like, wow. But it's like, man, the relationships, the way he writes the relationships of these characters, it's just so natural, and it's just so interesting. These characters, just like in real life, we got friends, they diverge, and sometimes you come back into somebody's life. So I recommend that one. People may be surprised because it's, like I said, it's so far. But like you said, try it out. It's like watching an episode of Cheers, right? Watch episode 128. And if you're interested, you won't worry about if I know them or not. You'll go back and try to catch up.
Yeah, sure. And then you hopefully you'll be excited because you go, oh boy, I got 100 more episodes to watch.
That's always fun, right?
Yeah.
And if you hate it, like, well, don't worry about the other 100 episodes.
Right.
You're not forced to read like this book or that book.
Yeah. The Love Bunglers, though, I took a real big chance with it because that book does rely on 30 years before it. Mm-hmm. But I was hoping that people would still be engaged with the present, but that particular one, to make the story stronger, I did rely on their whole past, like the story was leading from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's something in, like, it could be a movie or anything, or even at a party, at a conversation. There's something about walking in on two people talking.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have an interest in history or whatever, so, hats off to you for that. So read any Love and Rockets, people. Just,
Yeah, just start, and hopefully you'll want more.
Don't be one of these people jumping in on the 40th anniversary. Like, be a fan from, a couple of years back. My first, so I came in a little late to your work. I was at a comic book store, Mile High Comics. They had opened up one in Anaheim here a while back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And it was a huge store. And so luckily, it was so huge, they had to fill it up with all the alternative comics, right? Not just Marvel.
Right.
And I saw Love and Rockets. I'm sure I had heard of you guys just through the press, the fan press, and I'm looking at all the covers, and they were like, wow, look at all these brown Latino characters. And, Hernandez brothers. Well, obviously, it's a cool name. But I came across the cover of The Death of Speedy, and people look it up, but it's like, I'm looking at this cover and it's like, wow, Death of Speedy. There's like there's a homeboy guy on the cover with, I don't know what he called those shirts, the thick black stripes with the collar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very iconic. And he's got the baggy pleated pants, and there's this girl next to him. She's got the long hair, I can smell the aqua velvet that they used to spray in their hair. And there's like a Mercado in the background and some other homeboy looking guys and this Mexican guy with the Mexican cowboy hat. And I'm like, wow, it's we use this phrase all the time. It sounds kind of naive, but like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could put like Mexican, American,
right,
homeboy culture, lowrider culture in a comic. So I bought that one and some of Gilbert's stuff. And since then I was hooked. And So Death of Speedy is one I'd recommend too. That's a very early storyline. I mean, comparatively speaking.
Yeah, that was the first one that really got people's attention of my work. Gilbert was already doing major storylines, and Death of Speedy was just one that clicked because I just go, okay, this is the one where I'm just gonna do the old neighborhood.
Right.
I'm not gonna mix it up with anything else. This is all it's gonna be, is about where I grew up. And it was a hit. I mean, it was got a lot of readers from that. So,
and that's a good point there. Like your early work, it had like, it's almost funny saying this now. It had robots and dinosaurs, and Maggie's a space mechanic, and just so much detail in the background. Every nook and cranny, every boulder, and then Death of Speedy, and even of course all the the later stuff. It's very what we call minimalistic. I don't want to lose the audience with my highbrow talk. It's very minimal. But to me, it's like, yeah, this guy, this guy seems very interested in, I just want to tell stories about people, and it's people talking, and it's not boring stuff, because people are like, people talking, that's boring. It's just interesting, like life. So, because sometimes the backgrounds are very minimalistic, but when I read a Jaime Hernandez Love and Rockets comic, it's just like, I read it, like, man, I got a lot out of it. I don't need all the background and every little microscopic pebble and everything.
Right.
But you're very obviously interested in people. I think you're a people person.
Sure. I have to admit, I kind of took advantage of doing Mexican American Southern California life, because nobody was seeing it,
right?
Or nobody outside of it,
right.
TV wasn't showing it. Every once in a while, you got a little bit in a movie, but it was just kind of like, they never seen this, so this should be exciting. I can tell the oldest story in the world, but put Mexicans in it, it's new, man.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. You guys got a good fan base in England, which again, you think of the subject matter. Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
I remember years ago hearing about it. My jaw dropped. Right, I'd watch these old TV newscasts, like, oh, lowriders are big in Japan, and you see all these young Japanese kids. They got the hat and they got the white tank top, and it's like, wow, it's so interesting how like I said, Mexican culture, interesting, or something new for another.
My younger brother earlier this year was in Japan, and he was at like a 7-Eleven or something, and he said there's this like homie leaning against the wall, just totally mad dogging. He was just kind of like, really?
That's your cover, Death of Speedy, right there.
Yeah.
Japanese mercado. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, you're right. You and your brother are like, hey, let's just show what we know.
Yeah. And that's what we did with the punk stuff too. And, just because that stuff was not seen outside of the culture itself,
Yeah, and like, good for you guys, because you've, you started something new. So all week long, we've been doing panels all week, and we had a Queer Voices panel, and we also had a panel with various scholars and college professors. And what struck me really interesting, like in the middle of the panel, like they're asking the LGBTQ artists, like, hey, what are your influences? It's like X-Men and Love and Rockets. And I find that so interesting. It's like, okay, the outsider thing, but of course, you and your brother, and definitely in your work, Maggie and Hopi, early on, you were always having like these, alternative lifestyle, whatever they call it, or LGBT relationships, just as a matter of fact. And it's amazing the influence today that still has on, like I said, young queer comic readers and such.
And I learned as it was going on was I didn't really have to tell much. All I had to do was show them living, living their lives.
Right.
And I didn't really have to beat anyone over the head with it, because the reader filled that in.
Right.
They filled that in. Hopi was a hero to a lot of people,
Yeah, no, it's amazing to hear like the way they speak of it in such terms.
Yeah.
Boy, I got to start wrapping up. We got 10 minutes, but I got a ton of questions, but I'm trying to think. I'm sure Gabby will pop in with some more questions. One question I've always have is, and you know, a lot of people think about where I go to school for comics. What type of, you know, I hate that word, formal training did you have in comics,
Right.
other than like drawing at home and on the shopping bag?
Oh,
You know.
for comics? No,
Yeah.
it was all self-taught. I just learned from my brothers, or I saw what the artists were doing. You know, like you talk about Speedy's baggy pants.
Right.
I took Ditko style, you know, to do them, because I go, their pants are like how Steve Ditko would draw pants that were like 20 years after their time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mostly learned from them, from comics, you know, and ourselves, and just going, I think this is how it's supposed to go, you know.
I love that.
Yeah. But you know, because I had my brothers around, so it wasn't like I was on my own trying to figure this out. I mean,
Right.
I just copied a lot what Gilbert did. You know, he taught me so much.
Right.
You know, the older brothers have a head start, you know. But as far as art, I took art classes, you know, like junior college and high school and stuff like that, life drawing and stuff. So that helped me. That helped me a lot. But most of it was self-taught. Yeah.
That's amazing. When I was a kid, I'd look through the Marvel comics, and there'd be an ad for like the Joe Kubert School.
Uh-huh.
And my eyes would light up. And then as I read down, it said New Jersey. And like, I didn't have a sense of exactly where it was, but I knew it was on the other side of the world. So no, I'm not going to ask my middle-class Mexican-American parents to send me to New Jersey for.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, to me, it was the other side of the world. Like, I don't know where this is. I'd never get there. I've barely even left Oxnard. You know?
Right. So comic school, forget it.
Yeah.
But no, that's good. I mean, just do it on your own, folks. Your process, because again, it's another thing about comic artists, cartoonists, is, do you write yourself this 20-page script, detailed, or do you kind of, I don't want to say wing it, but you just visually just start drawing a rough draft?
I try to write like a loose script, mostly just a page of dialogue. Here, I'll show you.
Ooh.
So it just looks like this. It's a mess.
Oh, okay.
But it's just two people talking, right. And people who don't know who's talking is confused, but I know exactly who's saying what. And then I think like maybe I should write the whole thing, but I usually go straight to the board and I start editing there. And while I'm doing it, the more ideas start to flow, you know, because the characters have emotion that I can tell they're going to get mad at this part. How can I make them get mad in this scene, you know, or you know, stuff like that, you know. So it's just it's hard to well, let's put it this way. I could never teach this stuff because it's just too organic. It's too crazy. I couldn't explain it. I would totally confuse the students. They would say that was the worst class I ever took. Yeah.
Let me cross that question now, because there was one. Jaime, do you ever teach, or have you ever? Well, no, you answered it. I totally understand what you're saying about this is my process. It works for me, whatever. I think Gabriela looks like she may have some more fan questions.
I do, and I have actually. There's a lot of love for love bunglers, by the way, in the comment section, in the chat section. Both Natasha Hernandez and Charles Hatfield say that it made them weep. Charles was reading it on a plane, and the person sitting next to him couldn't understand why he was wiping his eyes. And Charles actually also has a question about storytelling in the process, which you just touched upon. So he wants to know if there's ever been a time in your pro career when you were just stumped, or a time when you ditched a story in progress because it just wasn't happening.
Oh, all the time. All the time. But I've taught myself that I can't waste time because I got a comic book to draw. If one character story is not moving, I put it in the back of my head. I put it away and I think about it in the back of my head while I'm doing the other person's easier story, you know, that's easier to do. So if you notice, Maggie's got more stories than anybody, that's because she's the easiest to write. I've had stories about Izzy and people like that who I had to wait 10 years to tell the story because I just didn't have it. It just didn't click. But I kept it with me because I thought this will be worth telling in the long run. So yeah. So it happens a lot. I mean, a lot of times a story, I'll just like, all right, you're going to the waiting, the inbox.
So also related to storytelling, Cameron Norbert mentioned that you featured a lot more space and sci-fi stories in the last 10 years of Love and Rockets. And they want to know if, in looking towards the next 10 years, if you have any other genres or ideas that you're eager to explore or that you might play with that might fall outside of the core cast of Love and Rockets.
No, I'm too old. I either do characters and their relationships or funny spaceships that I don't have to go to the internet to copy. You know, that's why you draw space stuff, you draw a car, you mess it up, that's fine because that's the way it's supposed to look. It doesn't look like a real Mazda or whatever, you know. So no, I just love my characters so much that I never want to leave them, you know. It's more important to me to tell their story than to explore artistic avenues, you know. The only thing I do make sure of is that these stories about boring people are going to be really interesting to people. You know, that's what's most important to me, is to make this really boring world exciting. You know?
And speaking of relationships, you said you wanted to focus on your characters' relationships. There's an anonymous attendee who would like to know if we will ever see Danita and Diablo Blanco again. Did Elias grow up and take up the mantle as Diablo Negro?
I think about them all the time. I just don't have a story. This is a perfect example of the stories that haven't clicked yet, but I would love to do it. I would love baby Elias come knock on Maggie's door one day or something, you know. I don't know. It's one day it'll come. Maybe it will never come, but I think about them a lot. Like, how can I fit them in, you know? Yeah.
And then we have another question that actually touches upon your relationship with your relationships with your brothers. So Daniel Mobley wants to know if you and your brothers are competitive with one another as artists. And do you all feel and acknowledge, this is what I'd like to know, that there is a best artist between all of you?
I don't think about that. Sure, or maybe I just don't say it. But the competition, I don't like to be competitive with my brothers. I like to think like Gilbert, I share a comic with. He's a big boy. He can take care of himself. I don't have to look after him, or I don't have to try to nudge him or anything like that. You know, we fought when we were kids and then we were done. You know, but no, I that stuff I just don't want to think about because it takes up too much time and space. I'd rather just get to work, you know, and I want to see him on Christmas and not fight, you know.
So I think we're ending the end of our time together. So I'm going to leave again and let you two maybe discuss a little bit more and then wrap things up. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, ho! That's for Ricardo Padilla. He trademarked that. That's the fans are. What are they saying? Why are they yelling? I got to share a really quick story with you, Jaime, since you're on. So, you know, you know, I do comics too, and I'm at a show, and I can't tell you how many times people come up to me, and it's like, oh, they look at my banner, they see my name. Oh, I gotta say, I'm a big fan of you and your brother. I love Love and Rockets. And in my head, I'm thinking as they're talking, like, oh boy, how do I let this one out? Let them down. I'm not that Hernandez brother. But one time at WonderCon, this was, I don't know, must be 10 years ago. Michael Chabon, he wrote this book, The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. Big Pulitzer Prize winning book. I'm at my table. He comes up to my table and I knew him because I brought the novel. I wanted him to sign it. I knew it was going to be at the show, but he stops by my table first. And again, he looks at my sign. Oh my gosh, I've always been a fan of you and your brothers. Da 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 da. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, Javier, this guy just won a Pulitzer Prize. He's like the young superstar literary guy. Do I let him? Do I tell him? Do I just go along with it and go, yeah, Love and Rockets, sweet, that's great? Or do I break his heart? I got to do that. When are you going to bust the Pulitzer Prize winner's knees, right? I go, oh, Michael, I'm not that Hernandez brother. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And anyway, that I don't know. You probably never get that. You probably never get El Muerto comics to sign, but I've been dealing with this forever. Yeah, so we're right at the 5 o'clock mark. I mean, I guess out of courtesy to Mola, we should definitely start wrapping it up. Anything you want to share with your fan? You got fans watching. I'm sure you talk to them at conventions and such, but since you can't go to conventions like anybody else, anything you want to share over your insights of 38 years making comics and the support that you've gotten from everybody?
I'm just really happy that those of you that have been following me 38 years or 2 years or 2 weeks. I'm just happy you're here and letting me still do comics and doing comics for you. I'm that old man who gets up and goes, thank you for letting me live another day to draw another comic. So I'm really happy that you people are reading my work and keeping me alive, just my soul, because you're all very swell, and I really appreciate it.
Awesome. No, it's a huge privilege to be just an artist and sustain yourself. It's a wonderful generosity of the fans. On behalf of Mola and especially the LCX, I want to thank you and of course your brother Gilbert and even Mario, because he was always instrumental in our earliest expos, because we used to do in San Francisco at the Cartoon Art Museum. And he would show up, set up his little table, and the fans were like surprised, like, wow, Mario Hernandez. So we thank you for your support of the expo all these years. And of course, thank you, Jaime, for your inspiration. I mean, you guys inspired a ton of artists, but I gotta say, I'm sure a lot of Latinos, especially Mexican American, like you guys were such a, wow, okay, they did it. If you guys did it, we can do it. And we're doing it.
And I'm the first to say, if I can do it, you can do it.
You heard that, all you artists, get out there and do your comic. Don't let anything stop you. So thank you so much, Jaime. Hey, we made it through without a tremor. I hope we don't have another one after this, but at least it'll be off camera. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Shake your computer to get that effect. But
thank you so
much. Yeah, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, and keep making those comics for us.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody. I think we're going to have Mola come in now and just, Solimar. Thank you. Bye, Jaime.
Bye.
So just a brief word on behalf of the board of directors, all the MOLA staff, and just the MOLA community. We want to thank all the panelists throughout the week. We want to thank Javier Hernandez. We want to thank Ricardo Padilla and the Latino Comics Expo team that has also collaborated in making this whole week possible. It's been an honor for us to host you all week, and we certainly look forward to future endeavors together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Solimar. Yeah, me and Ricardo, on behalf of the Latino Comics Expo, we definitely thank the tremendous, boy, you folks don't know how much work it is to all the behind the scenes stuff that Mola took care of, all the tech issues and setting all that up. So they've hosted us in the past for 3 physical in-person shows. So we're grateful for this digital show. The whole world's changed, right? We're all doing this. You know, everything's being done digital remotely. So we're thankful to be able to bring you this year's Latino Comics Expo Worldwide 2020. This is a very special, unique, you know, online edition. So we thank Mola, we thank our sponsors, Hyundai, for, you know, making so much of this possible with their generous contribution. And of course, all the other wonderful sponsors. You know, I thank Ricardo, my partner in this, the co-founder of Latino Comics Expo. We can't believe we're here at 9 years now, as of right now. This is now that this one is officially on the books. So we're looking forward next year, 10th anniversary. So everybody keep looking out for us, supporting us, follow us on social networks. And yeah, let's just get through the rest of the year, everybody. Please, you know, wash the hands, please wear the mask, socially distance, and just watch out for one another. And, you know, I'm always the one saying we got to be apolitical, but I would just say, please vote this November. Vote. Take your family, your friends, organize, whatever. Go vote. Very important. So thanks everybody for supporting Latino Comics Expo 2020, supporting our friends Mola, and support all your art institutions, nonprofits, artists, writers, comic book people. We appreciate it. So thank you everybody, and we'll see you guys again. Bye-bye.
Bye.